Hey friends, welcome back to Real Estate Developer Discussions with Katie Kim. Today we're diving into another episode of our Behind the Build series. Now, this series, it's not about concrete and contractors, it's about cash flow, confidence, and clarity. You need to run your business like a CEO and think like a CFO, because let's be real, if you're stepping into real estate development, whether it's your first project or your fifth, the numbers are not optional. They are your engine. And today we're talking about why you need to stop waiting for someone else to own them, because you're not just a developer, you are the CFO of your future. And to help you own that fully, I brought in one of the sharpest financial minds I know, my strategic partner and friend, Cheryl Heler of Pure One Consulting. Cheryl is a seasoned CFO who helps entrepreneurs and developers translate chaos into clarity. She's not here to teach you how to balance a checkbook. She's here to help you build a business and a development that makes you real money and real impact. If you missed our prior episode with Cheryl, definitely go back and check it out. But in this episode, we're unpacking the 5 metrics every developer should be reviewing weekly, the ones that actually help you make smarter decisions, stop guessing, and start building profit on purpose. This is your permission slip to stop saying, I'm not just a numbers person, because today we're rewriting that story. Let's go. Welcome back, Cheryl.
Thank you, Katie. So excited to be here.
Awesome. And if you guys missed Cheryl on one of our prior episodes, please go back and check it out. She was dropping some real knowledge nuggets. Today, we're going to be talking about owning that financial leadership role in your development business and within your company. Even if you're not a spreadsheet junkie or a full-time number cruncher, this is about stepping into strategy, vision, and financial control like the boss you are. So let's go ahead and set the table, why most developers don't see themselves as CFO and why that's a real problem. So I know I can think of many moments that have hit me on the financial end, especially the moment I realized my project cash flow was bleeding and no one was going to save me but me. So I want to take a step back and let Cheryl really tee it up for us is to start from what a CFO really does for us. And Cheryl, can you help us explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So a lot of people, they think accountant, bookkeeper, tax preparer, they're all the same thing. It's very different from what a CFO brings, right? So CFO is not just doing your QuickBooks and filing your taxes. The CFO is the person who is going to be there to help you strategically interpret your numbers and figure out how to take your business forward. Now, the bookkeeper, super important element in this process, right? Because you have to have the data has to be right in order for you to be able to create that story from your numbers. And your tax advisor, also super important part of the process, because you need to make sure that you're paying the taxes that you owe, but not paying too much, right? So your CFO works with both of them, but then takes the numbers that your bookkeeper gives you and looks forward. So usually when I work with a client, what I say is that the bookkeeper is the person who's telling you what has happened, what happened in the past. So they're telling you how much money you spent last month, how much money you brought in revenue last month, what your bank account balance is. Your CFO takes those pieces of information and then looks forward. So helps you project out what's your cash flow going to be in the future, or how can you afford certain investments that you need to make, or if you're in the middle of a development project, are you still on track and you're going to be able to finish the project with the amount of cash that you have in the bank. So it's really that kind of forward-looking, more higher level strategic work that a CFO is going to do with you.
Love it, because that shift, and I mentioned earlier about that moment that I realized, the project was cash flowing. You think like, okay, one tenant moves out, not a big deal. And then it kind of starts to creep in on you, or costs go up and you're not watching it, but you have that gut like, okay, we reconciled last month, we're fine, we got money in the bank, but you're not looking forward. And so shifting into that CFO mindset, that our numbers tell us a story and that we have to be reading it. So when you start to look at that, how are some ways that like developers lose money by ignoring what the real numbers are saying?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of that comes down to understanding how to interpret the data, right? So as a developer, when you start a project, you're doing your underwriting, you're doing your pro forma, right? You're building out your projections. But if you're not actually understanding how the numbers are coming in compared to those projections, you could really be heading off in the wrong direction, right? If you have cost increases or time delays that end up costing you more money, not understanding that is really going to put you in a bad position because you're going to get to the end of your project and still have bills to pay and no more cash in the bank, right? And you've worked with investors, you've worked with your banking partners, and everybody is trusting that things are going to turn out the way your projections were. And we all know that things happen, right? You have to make some decisions and shift in the course of a project. But if you're not staying on top of that, then you're going to be in the situation where you're going to need to go get more money. And that's the last thing that any developer wants to do.
Yeah. And what comes to my mind when you're talking about get to the end of the project and you have no more money. And a lot of times people that just say, oh, we're submitting the draw, we're submitting the draw, we're submitting the draw based off the schedule of values. Well, if you don't have your finance cost in the schedule of values, that's a huge chunk of money that's coming out of your loan draws, your investor funds that you're not accounting for. And I see a lot of beginner developers that do not put that financial bucket into their schedule of values or into their sources and uses. And it's exactly that. It's at the end of the project, they run out of money. And I love when I set up a project to have my I have multiple contingency buckets, as we talked about before. I'm a contingency, everything I can contingency, but not share that with the general team, because again, when they see it, it's oh, well, we'll just hit that. We'll just hit that. Well, a lot of times those are for the oh crap things at the end, or to me, after the project's done and you're stabilizing, right? So that's, you may use some of those sources to stabilize the project, not just the construction part of that project or the development part of that project. So one of the things we were talking about before we hit record was a tactical tip, right? And one of that we were talking about was Friday financial flashlight. So let me know or explain a little bit about what that is, and kind of, I know that bleeds into those 5 metrics that make or break a development business. So kind of, can you lead us into that? Because this landed for me and I want to share it with you guys and go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so I think it's super important for anybody that's running their own business, running their own project. They need to have a handle on the numbers. And that doesn't mean just once a month get your financial statements from your bookkeeper, right? You need to know on an ongoing basis what's going on. And I think creating systems and processes, routines around this stuff will help you stick to it. And so my recommendation would be to take 30 minutes every Friday, sort of at the end of the day, as you're sort of shutting down your week so you can go into the weekend, not worrying about it. Take that 30 minutes with yourself and go through this check-in. So we're going to talk about a few metrics that you can use to guide that check-in, but really it would be looking at things like, what's your cash balance? What do you think you're going to outlay from a cash perspective this coming week? What do you think is going to come in from a cash perspective this coming week, right? Are you taking a draw? Are you starting to lease up? Those sorts of things. And then looking at some of the other metrics that you're worried about. So what did you spend this week? How are your costs coming in compared to what you projected they would be? Are you seeing cost overruns, or is everything coming in, on track? Did something happen this week that made you when you're in the middle of a development project, if you have to tear down walls or anything, there's always unknown things that can happen, right? So how is that? Did something like that happen this week that's going to impact your overall go forward forecast? If you're not in the middle of a project, you might look at your pipeline, right? What deals are you, or even if you are in the middle of a project, you might still have a pipeline of other deals that are sort of coming along behind that. So where are they in the process? What information do you need? How are you sort of managing through that? The other thing, we talked a little bit about cash flow, like what's in the bank, but also what's your runway? So this is a term that comes up a lot with startups, right? It's runway is how long you can go without an additional dollar of cash coming in the door. So based on the cash you have in the bank, based on we also have burn rate, which is what you're spending each month. How many months of cash do you have in the door? So a really important number to keep in mind, especially if you're not bringing regular cash in the door, right? If you're in the middle of your development project, you're not yet collecting your rent for the space. And then understanding if there's been any change to the net worth of the projects, right? Like what equity you are expecting to get out of it, what your cash on cash might be, your return metrics, if anything's happened during the week that would impact all of those numbers. And you don't have to do a whole deep analysis on this, right? It's just a 30-minute quick check-in. And there might be things that surprise you. There might be things that you didn't expect. And you could actually just take that and create your to-do list for the following week. Like, okay, here are 3 things that I learned doing this financial check-in that now I need to take care of next week, or I need to ask my team to take care of next week. And so it really helps you kind of create that mindset that you're staying on top of things so you can, go into the weekend without having to worry about it.
I like that. I like that. When you said the runway money, that's always where, because I think as CFOs and even developers and CFOs, you're looking, I always say, I'm not stressed about like the next 3 months. Like I've already been looking at that for a year. I'm looking at 6, 9, 12 months and what's coming in. When's it going to be tight? So you can plan for that. When is it going to be tight and what's happening? And or how much money on the development side? Like how much money did you budget for utilities? How much did you like? Are all those things fitting the metrics? And where are you going to end up from a draw schedule, a project timeline? Because when the project goes over time and there's delays, people don't understand that it's not just more time. It's now you have more construction financing. Now you have more utilities, you have more dumpsters. There's so many things that ripple. And that's where like really great project management is really good at driving those projects on a timeline and on a cost. So when you talk about sitting in it for 30 minutes, so half of me thinks like there's no way I can sit in that for 30 minutes each week. So break down like what are the 5 metrics that I need that can either break or make those development businesses that I should be looking at in that Flashlight Friday?
Yeah. So the first one is going to be your cash flow forecast, right?
Okay.
So typically I would do a 13-week rolling cash flow. And that's going to allow you, now I know you said, 6, 9, 12 months down the road, it doesn't quite go out that long. But in the course of a project, you might want it to go out that long. But really, when it gets to the next 13 weeks, where is money going out? Where do you expect money to be coming in? And are there any weeks that are sort of that too close for comfort that you really need to start planning for? Because the worst case scenario is you get to that week and you're like, wait a second, I don't have enough money to pay my bills this week, right? You want to make sure that it's coming in enough time in advance so that you can make a plan to adjust. The next one is going to be that, we call it like budget versus actual, or your budget variance, right? It's what you projected versus what actually was spent. And that should be, pretty easy to keep up with on a regular basis if you're kind of keeping up with it each week. And the next one, and we talked a little bit about these, through them already, but that deal pipeline. So what is the value of the deal pipeline? So it's you can think of this from a development standpoint. Also, when I'm working with clients that aren't developers that have like a sales pipeline, right? You want to know what's in that pipeline and how likely it is to occur, right? Because that can help you plan for that future, to know what's going to be coming in the door down the road and what the status is of each of them, right? Like, are you, having good conversations? Have you gotten to proposal stage? Have you gotten to underwriting stage? All of those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
And then it's that personal runway. And that kind of goes along with your cash flow forecast, right? And knowing how long you can go, cash going in the door. And, you could think of this too from not just your development perspective, but you personally as a developer. Like, a lot of times people will not pay themselves because they need to pay their contractors or they need to pay, the bank. But how long can you realistically go without paying yourself out of the funds of the development, right? Because you're working so hard to get it done, right? And then the last thing, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode, is your personal financial statement, right? what is the sort of ongoing changes in net worth? Like, how are your projects impacting that net worth? Are they
Mm.
increasing it? Are they decreasing it? Like, you're taking on more debt, but you're getting equity, those sorts of things. And, that you may wonder, like, do I have to look at that every week? It might not change every week, but it's definitely something that you should have on that tracker, because for the weeks that it does change, you'll want to make sure that you keep an eye on it.
Well, and I think to the point of if you're looking at it every week, when you have those big shocks and those big surprises, you catch it faster and then you have that time to react, right? So, kind of a side, comment is I know that you have a couple different offerings, which we'll touch base at the end. But one of the ones you do is to meet with your clients on a monthly basis, review this stuff and go on into those details. And if they're reviewing it every week, like I just can't imagine that knowledge nugget that you're giving them in that session of like, okay, guys, we're here. Especially when you look at those projections, because of course I have an Uber spreadsheet, of course, that I track like all my projects, what are estimated, bill rates for that month as they're going through the process. But then I also have another tab that has the projected, and I do exactly what you just said. It's what's the probability of this closing? When's it going to hit, right? Because it could close and you still won't get paid out for a couple months. And, even on the real estate side. And then those all wrap up to kind of my dashboard, if you will, that says, this is what's confirmed. These are expenses. Like if nothing else changes, this is what our month is, right? Then I put in like the projected, because I don't even want to see the projected until like it's in, right? So it gives me comfort that I don't stress. And if we need to hire ahead of time. So I love when you're looking at it on a weekly basis and a monthly basis, and it gets me a little bit more than that quarterly or at the year end, where a lot of people just like, let's look and see how the year went. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little too late.
And I think too, like if you as the, developer or business owner are looking at it weekly, and you might get to the end of the month and say, well, why do I need to talk to my CFO? Because I've been looking at this every week. Well, it's helpful because then the conversation with your CFO can be that much more productive, because you're not just finding things out at that moment. You're not just understanding the data, but you're actually talking about what can I do with this data? You can be more proactive. You can be more planning and strategic focused. So both sides of the coin, right? You need to be looking at the data. You need to understand the data, because sometimes the first time you see it, it's not really going to tell you anything. But then when you start to look at it week after week after week, you're going to start to get a feel for it, and you'll very quickly understand if something's off base.
Yes. And I think that's what I was absorbing. It was landing for me when I was listening. I'm like, if I'm looking at this every week, then when I come and talk to you, that conversation is not like, here's your cash flow here. Like, what people would think is a checkbox conversation. It is like strategic, right? Like, what do we have to do? If nothing changes, this is what's happening. How do we change the game now before we get into those issues? And like,
Yep.
That's the real value of a CFO, right? Like you said, it's not a bookkeeper doing your books. They prepare you, but then you coming in and it's almost a better use of your time and your brain, right? That they're hiring you for. And I know you have like an amazing suite of services with that check-in that takes those reports and even gives them a further like dashboard and KPIs and really digs into like, what are you looking at, and kind of helps break those numbers down, which I think is so great. Cause like using this is really how I even guide to say yes or no to deals. If they're kind of a one-off deal, sometimes they cost you more time than it would be in that return. So you don't want to get like sold on that, I could call it like the sexy sizzle of a deal, before you really analyze it and can start to bring those numbers in and, bring them home. Right. And bandwidth. We all have so much time, so much staff. So,
yeah. Well, and that's, sometimes you get tied to the like emotion of the thing, right? Like you find a deal
developers
and
aren't
you get
emotional at all.
so emotionally invested in it, and you just can't get the numbers to work, right? Then the numbers are the truth, right? Like, and yes, you can manipulate the numbers a little bit. Like we've all been with people who manipulate the numbers, and projections are just that. They're projections. They're educated guesses. But really, like, it helps you take that emotion out of it, especially if you have certain criteria that you're looking for. Like as you look at your different metrics, as you're looking at, what do you want your net worth to be overall? Is this project going to add to that or not? Is it going to make it easier to get there or not?
Yeah.
the data kind of can take the emotion out of it.
So, and that kind of like bridges into that culture of accountability. I mean, pun intended with the accounting and the accountability is really running your business like someone's watching, even when no one is. If you're the only developer, if you're a company of one, an entrepreneur. So those, like, we talked a little bit about that Friday, Friday check-in, that Friday flashlight, and talking to him. But how are other ways that a developer or CEO can hold themselves accountable for really being that strategic driver of their business?
Yeah, I think, it's really making those decisions that you're making on a data-driven way, right? So you have your metrics that you're looking at, and you're getting that data, and it's helping you inform those decisions that you're making, as opposed to making decisions on, gut feel. And I know we all occasionally make a decision on gut feel, and that's fine, but really you want to be having the data drive your decision. And, keeping these rituals, whether it's that Friday flashlight or a monthly meeting with your CFO, or, just really understanding what those processes are that you want to do on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, and keeping to them, like you're scheduling the appointment with somebody else, right? Like a lot of times, like we see an appointment with ourselves on the calendar, and it's really easy to let it go if you just don't feel like it that day or something else comes up. But, you're running a business here. And so you have to really take that to heart and say, okay, like if you are accountable for that business, then you have to keep those set meetings with yourself.
Yes, and it'll make the process easier overall if you keep them. And I know we both have crank days. We have days where we don't take any meetings, and those are really the important meetings to keep. But we oftentimes push them, right? Like, oh, I got to go get a client because I meet with this client, I get another deal, and that's going to help my cash flow anyway. So I might as well do that. No, it's not. Like it will, yes, but it doesn't have to be right now. Or if you're going to schedule that and replace it, like swipe and replace, like swipe and put it somewhere else on your calendar. Where are you checking in? How do you hold yourself accountable? Because that's the hard accountability, right? That's the accountability when nobody's watching. And that's, I think, what counts more than when people are watching and checking in on you. So I love it because we're not just building projects, we're building a financial legacy, whether it's through development to enhance your cash flow or maybe your net worth. And so really want to wrap this up with really some of those like top 3 tips that you drop. So kind of just a recap, if somebody's looking at this and saying, yes, I'm ready, I'm going to stop pushing everything under the rug, I'm going to start taking control of my finances and drive my company with that, CEO energy, but yet CFO accountability. What are the top 3 things that they should be starting to put in place right now?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is mindset, right? It's, we've talked about this before. When you keep saying I'm not a numbers person, or I'm not good with money, or I'm not good with math, like your body, your brain is hearing that and it's believing it. And so if you can change that mindset to, I am good with money, I do know my numbers, and I'm accountable for my business, then I think that's the, first huge step that you can take. I think the second step is just really being on top of what's going on. So don't, like you said, sweep it under the rug. Look at the data, look at the numbers, and there's no judgment around them. That's just information. And how you're going to use that information is, the next step. So then you take that information and you use it to tell a story. If you're trying to get investors, if you're trying to get a lender, like you have to tell a story about your numbers. You can't just give them your financial statements or your Excel spreadsheet, right? You have to, and I know we talked a little bit about emotion, taking emotion out of it, but you have to bring the emotion back into it then when you're telling a story with your numbers to get them on your side and to get them interested in your deal.
Yeah. And I love when you were just saying about like bringing that emotion back into it and telling the story, because a lot of times that's where we start when we're dealing with a business that is doing a development, is like, again, we got to go to your numbers to know where you at. What is your staffing need? What is, the manpower, the bandwidth? We don't want to overwhelm a company by growing them and not doing it in a strategic way, right? So taking that time to check in, taking that time to be, honest with yourself, and this is where we're at, it gives you also more of that insight into that runway that you're talking about, not so much just with money, but with staffing, with people, with strategic relationships, and really let you put it out, because that then I think helps you be more strategic and in front of the business and proactive versus reactive, which I hate when I'm in reactive mode, because I know I didn't stay out in front of my skis, right? And from that analogy. And I love that you bring in the like, stop telling yourself that you're not good at math. Stop telling yourself I don't know numbers. Like, if you've been around me and you've said that, you know, I will stop you. I will correct you. If you've heard me speak on stage, I was like, yeah, I make people repeat, like, I am good at math. I can figure this out. And if you feel that like, yeah, Katie, but no, do the reps. Start with the reps. Start getting in the game. And Cheryl and I were talking about this before we hit record on this episode, that we are going to have those 5 metrics that Cheryl mentioned as a download in our show notes, and we'll have them on our website. I'm sure Cheryl will post them on hers as well. We'll have them in a place where you guys can download them. And so I'm super excited about this. We are going to record a Friday financial flashlight for you, where Cheryl is going to walk you through questions to ask yourself as you're looking at each one of those documents. So you can come back to it every Friday. You can reference it often and pause it, take a second, go through the exercise, come back to it. And so we are going to be posting that. We'll update the show notes with it as well. And I'm excited about this because I really want to call that to action. If you're not doing it today, take a second, block out that time, and really get it to come home. So we're going to stop there because we can talk forever, Cheryl. I know we just keep like, so you talk about this, we need to tell them about this. So we're going to bring Cheryl back again, because I want to really dig into capital stacks with Cheryl and developer fees. So stay tuned. We're going to bring that one on. So first and foremost, thank you, Cheryl, for being with us again today. And we look forward to the Friday financial flashlight that everybody's going to be holding themselves accountable, looking at the numbers, because they are good at math. So want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, that was a mic drop, wasn't it? So if you're walking away from this episode feeling like, okay, I can do this, good, because you can. And more importantly, you must. You don't have to be a spreadsheet genius to lead your development business with financial confidence, but you do need to know what the story your numbers are telling. And you need to look at them often enough to actually course correct before it costs you everything. So here's your challenge this week. Start your Friday financial flashlight. Block 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. Ideally, I'm going to say an hour, but let's start with 30. Make it less painful, and let's make it manageable for you. So take out your calendar, block out that 30 minutes on Friday, look at your cash flow, your pipeline, your project budget. Ask yourself, what's working? What's off? What needs my attention before it becomes a fire? You are the financial CFO of your future. Whether it says it on your business card or not, Cheryl and I are going to provide a Friday financial flashlight walkthrough episode for you to download and use every Friday, along with the PDF checklist to help guide you through it. Check the show notes for the link. And if this episode helped you see your role in a new light, if it gave you the tools or the mindset shift you needed, share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Tag us, screenshot it, start the conversation in your circle. Heck, comment flashlight every Friday when you complete your Friday financial flashlight for some accountability. We'll be here cheering you on, because more women starting to step into this kind of leadership, unapologetic, strategic, and clear, the whole industry starts to shift. This has been another episode of Behind the Build series on real estate developer discussions with Katie Kim. I'm Katie Kim, and I'll see you here next time, where we're turning big ideas into profitable realities, one smart decision at a time. Let's go. Hey, friend, before you go, I want to say this. If real estate development has been on your heart or on your mind, we've built lanes to help you walk it out wherever you're starting from. Just exploring? Start out with our free live masterclass. Ready to do the reps and build the strategy? Join the Developer 101 Bootcamp. Already active and need to level up? Step into the Real Estate Development Academy. You don't have to figure this out alone. We can teach you, we guide you, and we walk with you. So head over to katiekim.com and book a call with our team today, and let's figure out the best first or next step for you. You're not behind, you're not too late, and you're definitely not too early. You're right on time. Let's go. The information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice. It's not financial advice. It's not investment advice. Real estate development, like any investment, carries risk. Before you make decisions, you should always consult a licensed professional, your attorney, your CPA, or your financial advisor, to name a few, to make sure you're making the right choice for your situation. I'm here to share insights and strategy, but you're responsible for your own decisions, and each situation is unique. So make sure you contact your professional team to give you your specific guidance for your specific case, as each real estate development's different and unique and has its own challenges and opportunities.